Conference that is about to start in just a few moments, actually just minutes right now. We're going to send it back to the studio and you guys can take it live.
Call 662.
All right, that was David Romero reporting live from Los Alamos. Of course, as he said, that meeting, that update that comes every day at noon is about to start. We want to let you know about some other community meetings that are set for today. Tonight for Los Alamos, there will be evacuees. Now we understand that the press conference is now beginning. Let's go ahead and go to that in progress.
No structural damage anywhere in Los Alamos at all. This is different than Sierra Grande fire. I was here. It's quite different than what it was. When can we come back? You'll hear more from the incident command and from our fire chief. The council will not, based on what their recommendation, allow anyone to come in until we know that this town is safe for re-entry. And you'll get a fire status. What's the status of the fire? We know from last night, I got to talk to Chief, the fire crossed over into Santa Clara. I know Governor Daschino, we share his concerns, especially for his cultural bluffs. Here to assure him that we will be in this recovery together. The council has started meeting with community residents. 2 p.m. There's shuttles provided at the shelters. 2 p.m. at the White Rock Baptist Church, and we will continue to do those briefings. And I believe, no, I think we're going to have Governor Martinez will be joining us in a few minutes, but Governor is coming. Okay. And we'll have her make some comments. Not to put you on the spot, but would you like to make some brief comments to folks?
Just a quick update, if we could.
Sure, yes.
Just to let everybody know, we have new firefighters that have arrived on the ground. They arrived last night. We have about 1,000 firefighters and support staff that are concentrating on the entire fire all the way around. We were over at Conchas last night and gave a briefing and gave good information to them and got feedback on how we could really be better at describing Conchas and the different parts of that area that have the name Conchas but aren't the same place, so that when we identify burns or identify threats, they did ask for the press to be a little bit more specific so that they know which part is being talked about. We have more National Guard that is being deployed right now to Cloudcroft. We have the Little Lewis and the Donaldson fire that's taking place down there. What we're asking again is there are a lot of folks out there that want to help. They want to be able to donate things. Call the Red Cross. Call the Salvation Army. Now they've got to have resources that are going to be shipped down to the Cloudcroft area, because we do have some evacuation taking place there as well. Again, the fireworks, please don't purchase them. Please don't use them. I want to actually compliment some of the businesses that have actually pulled the fireworks off of their shelves. And they include Walmart, Albertsons, and Smith's. And they have pulled them completely off of their shelves. In the local area, Española and Las Vegas, TNT has actually shut down their stands, their fireworks stands as well. It's not enough. We need to go statewide, because yes, this is where it's burning right this second, but that doesn't mean that the rest of the state is not dry. It is dry. We need to not have any further sales and or purchases of the fireworks. We've also got, as I said, we're going to have plenty of state police who are adding to the number that are going to be out in the street enforcing the laws of the municipalities and the counties that have restricted the types of fireworks that are being used. And of course, there's an executive order as well that says, as of April 22nd, there will be no fireworks on state lands pursuant to a governor's order. Thank you.
Thank you, Governor. And now I'd like to ask Senator Tom Udall, who's been here supporting us. Senator, brief comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Well, first of all, I think it's very important that we have these daily briefings, and I just want to compliment all of the officials that are behind me, the lab officials, county officials, state, federal, the governor. Very important to get out information, and I think that's the essence of what we're trying to do, give you the most accurate information what we have that's on the ground at this point, so that we can dispel the fears that are out there that are sometimes being whipped up. I can't say enough about the firefighters and complimenting them. I was on the scene yesterday and hearing personally from them the hours and hours, 24/7 for weeks at a time, that these folks are putting in to try to protect property and life, and I want to compliment them. I would assure people here in Los Alamos that might be watching this that in my time up here, all of the law enforcement people in the National Guard that are working to protect their property. I think the streets up here are being patrolled, and it's a very good, solid situation. And then finally, on air monitoring, we have a independent system at 3 different areas, from the national labs to the state of New Mexico to now EPA, doing air quality monitoring and finding and reporting to us that what is in the air is the same as we would see in a typical forest fire situation in New Mexico. No chemical contamination, no radiation contamination. And we had the start of that EPA plane, kind of the mobile laboratory that I talked about, started yesterday. I think it'll be flying through Saturday, and will continue as necessary. So thank you to everybody that's just working so hard on this.
Thank you, Senator. And now I know for those, what you really want to hear from is our fire chief and our incident command folks. So we'll start with Chief Doug Tucker.
Thank you all. Today is a good day for parts of this fire. It's a bad day for other parts of this fire. Our hearts go out to the folks that are suffering the bad part of this fire. The anchor that the team has been putting in is working. It's holding. In fact, right now we're hitting the hot spots with hand lines. And so that means that we're not getting any fire coming from the south. On that anchor down in the south, the black line along State Road 4 has held, continues to hold. In fact, I flew it this morning, and we don't have any stumps or anything burning within 150 foot of State Route 4. The 501 burn yesterday was very active. It burned, it worked, and now we have an anchor along 501. Today they're tying off finally trying to tie off Los Alamos Canyon, the top of the canyon. The fire is creeping into the canyon, and so they're going to go down in the bottom and look at firing that out. That will buy us another anchor that ties it into the Camoson Ridge. So this continues to get anchored around the county. The sad news is, with it going in Santa Clara Canyon, that's going to take some resources away. We have seen fire behavior we have never seen down here, and it's really aggressive. We talked about repopulating the community, looking for Friday, Saturday. That's not going to happen. This fire is too active. The burn scar from the Cerro Grande fire is too active. Those dead and downs continue to burn. The fine fuels grab those logs, and it continues to burn and move across those areas that we thought were a good solid anchor, that I personally thought was a good solid anchor. So for those folks that I told that Friday, Saturday was our target, we are no longer looking at Friday and Saturday as our target. Right now, we will not put you in here until the Type 1 team says it's safe. With that fire, if anybody saw that column last night, nobody would have predicted that column when it hit Santa Clara Canyon. So that's the type of activity you're dealing with. This, like the counselor said, this is not the Cerro Grande fire. So when re-entry, repopulation is going to be a lot easier. We don't have to go back in. There's no utilities missing. We don't have to do any rebuilding. We don't have to close any streets. So repopulation should go fairly smooth once we're able to give the go-ahead and let folks move back into town site. But we cannot let them move back in when there's still fire, active fire in the canyons around here, and we just don't have a good handle to say it's safe to come in here. We have folks that will be in the north community. We're still working to tie off the north community. That's an old burn scar. Again, the burn scars are burning, and that's unusual. We're just seeing activity. The dead and downs are less than 3%. It doesn't get any drier than that. So the humidity in those logs is such that any fire, they're torching off on us. That's an unusual fire behavior. And I'm going to let Jerome McDonald talk about the fire, where it's at, where it's going, and what's happened. But his crews are busting butt out there. They're working shoulder to shore for our guys and then gals, and it is working. We're protecting the town site in the lab. The problem is the fire now with the winds, and today's going to be a wind event. We're going to see heavier winds today. So today it's going to keep moving north, And so there's a lot of different pieces. We have a small piece of that puzzle. And our piece is looking pretty good, but the rest of the puzzle's not looking real good.
Chief, when you're talking about Sierra Grande, would you just assure people electricity's on? There's no the safety of it as well.
There is no utility compromise. There's no road compromise. Everything will be open and working when we bring folks back. It's not like the Sierra Grande where we had to go in and turn gas on neighborhood by neighborhood, pilot by pilot. That's not necessary this time. And more than likely what it'll be is just a repopulation, and I'll let Chief Torpy talk to that, but I'm going to let Jerome McDonald discuss where the fire's at. Jerome?
Good afternoon. I'm Jerome McDonald, Operations Section Chief for the Southwest Area Incident Management Team, and we've been here since Sunday. Let me talk a little bit about yesterday's fire growth. It ran four miles to the north of Los Alamos, and the current acreage is 92,710, I believe, based on our IR flight last night. And most of that growth was north. It ran into the Santa Clara, down into the bottom of that drainage, and up and out the other side. And there is portions of the fire that are now back on the Forest Service land there to the north of the Pueblo. We're working closely with the Pueblo, identify trigger points and opportunities as far as what we can do to that fire. It's basically backing down the canyon now to the east, and we're looking at what we can do as far as tactics to stop that spread to the east in the canyon. If you're familiar with that canyon, there's water in that canyon, and there's a tank with a lot of water. They call it the number 3, and it's just above that in the canyon headed east. And so we've moved some resources around to that side, and we're scouting out above the Pueblo and looking at what our opportunities are going to be on the Forest Service and that 144 road. We are moving resources north, but we are as well backfilling behind those resources to make sure that everything we've got as far as an anchor is covered. Now, what we're doing today, we did a burnout yesterday off that 501 road to the north and connected that to the Pajarita ski area road. We're going to take that anchor and we're going to continue to flank it on the west side. And our plans are to get it back up to the ridge and utilize the Sierra Grande fire scar and to continue to flank it to the west, or flank it on the east side to the north. We're doing the same kind of operations on the west side as well, flanking it and trying to keep up with it. We're looking for opportunities this morning based on the conditions to utilize some air tankers on that north piece, and also on the west side where it went north last night to keep it from going farther west. So we're looking at those opportunities. They looked at it, our air tac looked at it, our air patrol looked at it this morning. It was a little too smoky. They're looking at it now. I think we might get an opportunity with the smoke clearing if the winds don't hurt us. So we're looking at getting some retardant and air tankers on that north, the head, and the west side to keep it from going west. So give us an opportunity to get some people in there. We're moving people there around there now, and looking for opportunities in the next 24 hours to be able to start working on that north finger. So, any questions?
We'll take questions at the end. Thank you. Thank you much. Now we'll ask Chief Wayne Torpy, who will talk to us about the repopulation as well as how the safety is of the town during the day and the evening. Chief Torpy.
Thank you. Good afternoon. First of all, the repopulation of the community, I want to cover that, and I want to be very clear. Folks right now are hurting us. They're trying to come back. People are hearing rumors. The information is spreading from other sources other than Los Alamos County. Los Alamos County called the evacuation, and Los Alamos County will be the ones that repeal the evacuation. So if you're hearing from your friends and your neighbors, or from something you heard in a statement that was an estimate of when, please don't pre-stage yourself along the sides of the roads or impact the checkpoints by trying to be the first ones back in town. Last night and this morning, I drove every community in Los Alamos proper. I've driven down too many streets to count. Your homes are in good condition. They have not been impacted by the fire. There aren't people taking your things out of your homes. There's police everywhere, National Guard everywhere. When you see these Humvees running up and down the road, and our military reservists and our Air National Guard folks who are carrying guns in the town, they're here to save and protect your property. So I want to reassure everyone that nothing has changed in your home since you left that I can see from the exterior, and if it is from the interior, it's only something that happened that was a maintenance item. So please just be patient with us. The fire chief spoke to you about the difficulties of choosing the time to bring folks back into town. This is not the Cerro Grande fire. We don't have burned homes, we don't have interrupted utilities, we don't have anything that has affected your properties other than the absence of you in them. So again, please be patient, wait for us. There's going to be a stage of things that happens over the next several days, and we haven't chosen the time yet. So if you're trying to guess and play poker with that, you're going to be sitting alongside a highway, you're going to get frustrated and mad at us, and you're going to erase the successes that we had of the speedy evacuation by having a very painful reintegration of the community. So again, please listen to that warning. We are not letting you in because you're sitting out there pleading with us. That won't happen. Now, how are we going to make it work? We have to get the city open. The county has to open city operations. We have emergency personnel only here. That's the essential people that make this thing function during the crisis. Before we can bring community people back in, we have to get our hospital reopened. You know, once we dump a population into this community, we need to be able to provide medical services. Our hospital's closed. They need advance time. We need to give them advance time so that they can do those things. County needs to bring all of our county operations that support the residents back up to operation. We're working on that. We are starting to staff up. Starting tomorrow, we'll be staffing the county up. That's not an indication of that something's imminent. We're staffing the county up because we're paying our county employees, and we feel it's safe enough now that we can start bringing some administrative staff in to help us deal with this, bringing folks back in the community. Again, I'm going to say that. If you hear your county employee, friend, or neighbors coming back to work for some reason tomorrow, that's not some trigger to tell you you're coming back 24, 48, or 72 hours later. Those are your tax dollars. We're putting them back to work and helping us get ready to open this place, okay? All right. So, if I'm not clear enough about that, I'll try something else, but I'll know that by about 4 hours from now after we see how many people are still showing up in town or trying to get into town. The security of the town, I just want to reiterate to the folks in White Rock is not being forgotten. We are, continuously adding more staff as they've been brought here. We have had no incidents of any type relating to this event that tell us there's any problems from looting, thefts, or anything new that's going on in the community. Other than that, I will repeat, the homes are good. Please stay where you are, stay safe, watch the media. Your notices for when you come back will come back through the media. They will come back. We will try the reverse 911 for those of you who have registered email addresses and cell phone numbers. We will also use that as a means to try to let you know to come back home again. But I actually know for fact nobody will have a problem hearing the word to come back. We will, the county, it'll come from me, the fire chief, or the county administrator. And if you don't hear it from one of the three of us, don't pay any attention to it. The laboratory is coordinating with us on this. We are not going to have the laboratory open before the county is open, and there may be some distance between the time the county opens and the time you can get back on the laboratory. We don't need folks coming up here from off the hill to come check their work locations at the same time that we're opening the county. That would just add more traffic to the town. Remember, a good portion of the laboratory population lives off the hill. We've got folks coming back up here when they do with horse trailers, with animals, with very critical young children, things like that we do not want to be sitting in cars for hours in a very hot day and risk anybody's life after we've done such a great job as a community of protecting people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Torpy. And also, direct information 662-8333. Now I'd like to ask Charlie McMillan, Los Alamos National Laboratory Director, to come up. And Kevin Smith.
Yeah. Good afternoon. I'm Charlie McMillan. I'm the director of Los Alamos National Laboratory. I have with me Kevin Smith, the site office manager for the NNSA site office here at Los Alamos. There, again, are three things I'd like to talk about. One are the regional impacts of this fire on the laboratory. Second, the update on our part of the puzzle of air monitoring that Senator Udall spoke about. And then finally, the planning that we're doing for restarting the laboratory. Before I go into those three areas, though, again, I'd like to thank the firefighters who have been doing such a magnificent job here helping to secure this national asset. Yesterday afternoon, after I talked to you, I was able to see part of the burn back that the firefighters were doing along Route 501. And they were burning right across the street from the Emergency Operations Center, where I spend most of my days and half of my nights. And seeing the professionalism of the men and women who are out there working, the care that they took in doing their job, I'm truly impressed and want to say thank you to the folks who come from all over the country to help do this. Let me now turn to the regional effects. As Chief Tucker has said, the risks to the physical laboratory are lower today than they were earlier in the week. I'm very thankful for that. The laboratory continues to be safe, continues to be secure, and we continue to protect our facilities, including all of our nuclear facilities. But the risks today are lower than they were earlier in the week. However, the laboratory is not just a bunch of buildings. It's not just a bunch of equipment. The laboratory is the people of the laboratory. That is the fundamental asset that this laboratory has. And those people live all over northern New Mexico. It's my understanding that some of our employees have lost homes in Jemez and Conchas. I'm concerned that some of our employees' homes will be threatened in the fire as it moves to the north towards Santa Clara. And so I want to be sure that the employees of the laboratory know that just because the risk is lower here does not mean that my concern for them, for their families, and for their homes is any less. Second, I know that there's a lot of uncertainty because in a crisis like this, rumors become a core competency. And so one of the things that we've discussed this morning and is starting to be done is that we developed at the laboratory technology for the DoD to be able to fly in a plane and very quickly look at an area and then produce that in a way that we can look at it on the web. It turns out we have one of those planes here in the area right now, and this morning I've asked the plane to fly here around Los Alamos. And so what we plan to do is to take the pictures that are taken by those planes, or that plane, put them up on the web for you so that you can see what the town looks like now without needing to come in. And so I'm hoping that later today we can have that up on the web for you and you can look at it on your computer or your phone or whatever. But we'll send out a press release. I'll get an email out to lab employees so you can see where your home is, you can see where the fire was, all of those kinds of things. So hopefully that will help with at least some of the rumors. Let me turn next then to air monitoring. As Senator Udall said, there are several different pieces of the puzzle. Our laboratory piece continues to show consistency with the other pieces, that what we're seeing in the fire is very similar to what we'd see in any other fire here in New Mexico. And just before I left to come here, I was in the room with the folks who are working on these data because I'd like to make the data available to the public as quickly as we can. We do this normally through the RACER database, and the folks at the lab are working very hard to do that as quickly as possible. I've asked them to do it right, not to compromise on the science, but to do it as quickly as possible. I can't promise you when that will be, but again, when it is, we'll make sure we get word out to you so you know where it is, you have the website, you know where to look. But again, the message here is We aren't seeing anything unusual in those samples today that makes me think it's other than a normal forest fire. Finally, let me talk about planning. As both Chief Tucker and Chief Torpy said a minute ago, the laboratory and the county are working very closely together because we can't become unglued and open the lab and not have the county ready, open the county and not have thought through how we'll do things in the lab. As I mentioned yesterday, I've appointed a recovery manager. His name is Chris James. He and his team have been working today, and I heard their first briefs starting to think about how we'll do the recovery at the lab. But let me assure you, we're going to do it in a coordinated way with the county. Neither of us is going to get ahead of the other, and we'll do this as quickly and as smoothly as we possibly can. So finally, again, let me say thank you to the people of the laboratory. I appreciate your patience, your long suffering as we work our way through this crisis. I plan this afternoon to go down to one of our shelters and just spend a little bit of time talking to folks, making sure I understand what some of their concerns, so that as we think about what we're doing here at the laboratory, we'll be ready and can help address some of those concerns. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. Now we'll stand for questions.
Question for Charlie, real quick. One of your colleagues said that there's probably less than a 1 in a million chance that one of these facilities that houses the drums would actually catch fire. Would you agree with those odds? How would you characterize that?
So let's see. So first of all, let me try to clarify what I think Carl said. It's not 1 in a million chance that it would catch fire.
Less than.
Yeah, that's not the issue. The issue is less than 1 in a million chance of releasing the radioactivity into the environment and having off-site dose. So fire is one of the hazards. There are many others that we analyze. But the standard that we use in our analyses is trying to reduce that level to 1 in a million. So when I talked the other day and when Carl talked, it was that analysis that gets us to that level.
Chief, there was some spotting that looked like in Los Alamos Canyon. You said the fire was creeping in there. If you could talk about what you guys are doing to try and fight that.
The fire did get into Los Alamos Canyon because of that active behavior yesterday. There is a spot fire in Los Alamos Canyon. It's in the right place, and the teams are going in and burning out basically from the reservoir down to the West Road. And because of the thinning efforts that were done earlier, they're able to get in there and do that safely, and that just ties that anchor off. It just continues to anchor that black line that starts around at Bandelier and works its way all around the county.
What's the danger with doing some of that back burning today?
They have to burn it off. There's live fuel in there. This is a living thing. People don't realize that wildland fire is a living thing. It's going to move. It's going to do what the wind takes it, or the fuel takes it, or topography takes it. So you can't just shut it off when you want to shut it off. People say, well, why don't you bring in the heavy tankers? That's just going to stop in one place. So the way you do it is remove the fuel. So right now that fuel is being removed in a safe, efficient manner.
Well, Chief, one of the air tanker pilots yesterday told me that early on they were seeing spotting up to 5 miles in advance of the fire's front line. If that's accurate, and today is your worst wind day, could you see condition on par with that again?
Yes, this isn't the worst wind day. It's a bad wind day. Okay, and so yeah, anytime it's spotting out a half mile, even a quarter mile.
But up to 5?
Up to 5 miles. You got to wind. This is wind driven. It picks up those embers, it goes into the unburned fuels, and it takes off again. So wind is always an issue with wildland fires. You had
What's the condition of the ski hill?
The ski hill is a challenging effort. Right now we still have crews up there. In fact, we have crews up on top fixing the cell tower and our radio tower. We lost radio, and so they're up there taking care of that. So it continues. It started on the east and west end. So we've lost. It's burned some trees, but only on the extreme sides, and has gone through the runs. But it continues to go through that. That's unburned fuel, and so it keeps finding it. And that's going to be a challenge for quite a while.
What about these ridges we see behind us? I mean, is that kind of a threat to town, or is that several miles away?
That's several miles away, and with the winds the way they are and the fuels, I think we're pretty good with them up there. Again, the sad part is that takes it over to Santa Clara.
Talk about the sacred tribal grounds. What is at risk? What has burned, or what is at a potential risk of burning?
Okay, first off, I don't think I'm qualified to talk about the sacred land, but I'll tell you, I flew it this morning, and the plume that we saw yesterday was just a small portion of that bowl that was in. And there's a lot of virgin timber up there. It's a pristine area that has a lot of risk and a lot to burn. But I think I'll let Jerome McDonald talk about what's at risk up there.
Chief, before you go, can you tell us a little bit more about the Cerro Grande burn area and the erratic behavior going on there, and a little bit about the danger challenges of dealing with that type of fire?
Okay, what I was talking about, usually when you have a burn scar, it's burned it enough that the fuels aren't going to get up and run, and it's just going to lay there. And usually when it hits there, it's kind of like hitting a thinned area. It just drops to the ground. The problem is the fine fuels, the grasses and the fine fuels are carrying the fire to those logs that during the Cerro Grande fire were trees prior to the fire and are on the ground. If you go up there and take a look, it's like matchsticks. They're laying there. And so any fire that touches it is going to start a fire, and then that carries a fire, and there's a lot of fuel load. The BTUs being released by those trees are what's carrying this fire.
Chief, how close is it to the Pueblo proper? Are any structures being threatened at this point?
I'll let Jerome speak to that, but we protected a ranger station up there at the bottom of the canyon, and it's probably 4 miles from that, 3 or 4 miles from that. It's a ranger station that was protected during the Oso and the Cerro Grande fire. Jerome, you want to talk about the...
And to answer your question about the Pueblo and the what's there, it's at least 7 miles from there, and that's to the east. And that's what I was talking about earlier as far as in the canyon, not allowing it to go any farther east. And so that's one of our priorities today.
Can you speak with context as to what the relevance of those grounds?
Now, this is a separate question as far as you're talking about Chacoma Mountain there, which is actually not down in the bottom of the drainage. It's up on the other side to the north side. The fire ran through the drainage from the north, or from the south to the north, and it's up on the top of that mountain.
But the tribal grounds, what's the relevance of that area there?
It's a sacred ground to the Pueblo. They do specific ceremonies and things like that, and they've identified that area to us. But with the fire activity yesterday, it ran up and it's on that mountain. We had people there keeping an eye on it, but they had to pull out yesterday evening. But it's on top of that mountain.
So are sacred areas burning right now at this point?
Yes.
And how bad is the damage to the watershed?
We're going to have to, when we get a chance to get back in there and see what kind of the severity. When you look at the fire from a distance and you're not able to get in there for a couple days, it's not that fire ran and everything is nuked or everything is killed. Sometimes at night when it's backing down the drainage, you get less damage. In fact, some beneficial effects of that. So we will, as we get into the rehab mode and start to look at different areas of the fire, we do satellite imagery for the severity of the burn, and those areas that burn more severe than others, and that turns out to be a mosaic, and so it's not 100% of the area that's cleaned off. It's usually less than that.
Jerome, the burn scar area up in that where the fire burned yesterday, is that helping you guys control that fire, contain that fire?
Right, and with that, the burn scar, the Cerro Grande burn scar, which is all this face behind us as far as the east side of the fire, is basically as it hit that, and it's more going north, but as it hit that, the fire intensity. Or the flames dropped, and fire intensity is still hot, but it's more of a backing fire to the east, and that's why we're putting our efforts on this flank here above Los Alamos, and that east flank. That's something that we can get people into and work on the flank.
You're seeing growth on two ends of the fire here, right? On the southern end and on the northern end, though the winds are moving in a northerly direction. One, do you expect the winds to shift back in an eastward direction later this afternoon? And two, talk about the growth in two different places on two different flanks.
Okay, let me talk about the growth on two different flanks, because the majority of the growth, the 23,000 acres that were yesterday, was the north. Okay, there's very little growth on the south. There is some growth, and the other incident management team is covering that south end. I don't expect from our forecast that we'll get east winds. The forecast is for southwest. Red flag winds, but the other factor that's going to hurt us today is that the thunderstorm winds, which you can't predict where those gusts are going to come from. So we could, out of a thunderstorm, get an east wind, but that would be an isolated portion of the fire.
Did the fire creep into Bandelier at all yesterday, or was that pretty well protected?
It's in Bandelier, and what's happening down there in the park in Bandelier is the fire is moving down in the drainages, and we have crews, and they're hopscotching from those different drainages and stopping the spread in the drainage. So in Frijoles we did that a couple days ago, and the next drainage south they worked on yesterday, and they're stopping that. So they're having a lot of success.
Did the fire creep any closer to the actual structures down there?
No.
Jerome, you were here for Cerro Grande. How does the preparedness affect today's firefight from 11 years ago to today?
We've come up against that in a couple areas where it was been beneficial, and especially with the burnout yesterday on the 501 road that we're talking about. There was fuel work done in that as far as thinning and those kind of mitigations after Sierra Grande, as well as the fire up above, and that was very helpful for accomplishing that burnout yesterday.
Can you talk about the significance in this acreage? You're just shy of matching and beating the largest fire in New Mexico history, and for us it's a number, 92,000, but what does that really mean?
Well, that's definitely an indication of what kind of fire season this has been. Our team was on the Wallow fire as well. We were on it when it went above the Arizona record as well, 400-some thousand. It wound up being 500, but it's an indication of how severe this fire season is, and we're seeing, as firefighters, we're seeing extreme fire behavior and things that we haven't seen in our careers, and the kind of growth that we haven't seen in our careers. And it's mostly the biggest growth is in that higher elevation mixed conifer, which is on the top of these mountains here, and the hardest part about that growth is that it spots out mile and a half, and so it propagates itself by those spots, and that's how it's getting the large growth.
The IR flight pegged this at I think 92,000. So we've seen quite a bit of growth to the north already with this plume. Is it safe to say that this is most likely in the triple digits by now?
Not by now, but it will be soon.
Jerome, how long of a career are you talking about in terms of?
35 years.
35 years.
So is this fire the largest fire in New Mexico history right now?
I'm not sure what the numbers are.
Not even 94. So we will probably break a state record here with this fire.
Yeah.
Do you expect the same sort of growth that you've seen over the last 24 hours, over the next 24 hours, from 60 to 90,000 acres? I mean, basically 140 or so sections, 140 square miles?
I do not expect that kind of growth today. I do expect, we've had, since we've been here, the first day was 40,000, second day 20, the third day 10, and I'm thinking it's going to be closer to that than what we had yesterday at 23,000.
Director McMillan, if we could ask you just what are some of the measures being taken to protect some of the legacy waste areas and legacy waste itself?
Yeah, certainly. So I think I mentioned yesterday that we had sent crews out yesterday and the day before to go remove fuels even further from around those areas. That work is essentially done now, and we're moving on to doing some of the other work that we could find around the boundaries of the laboratory, just as Jerome said, to further move fuels back, to thin them out. And so we're doing that. In addition, in collaboration with his teams, down toward White Rock, we've been cutting bulldozer lines, taking in the masticators to be able to cut lines there. So that's all work we're doing, and we're coordinating it with the fire teams.
If you could kind of explain to the layman what legacy waste is and what are the hazards that it could potentially...
Well, so what they are is they're things like lab coats that we've used in plutonium facilities, gloves that have been used there, things like that have touched radioactive materials, and because they've touched them, we have to treat them very carefully so that, you know, they don't get out into the public. And so that's the kind of thing we pack into these metal drums and then ship to WIP.
There are some people that say that, you know, back in the 1940s, 1950s, at the onset of some of the experimentation that was going on in Los Alamos, there were certain projects that just weren't documented. They thought it was okay to kind of bury this stuff in cement or possibly just bury it in the ground. Is that true? And are those areas that have been suspected of maybe housing some of this material, are those areas being protected as a precaution?
Well, let's see. There are a bunch of questions in there. One was about the history. You know, clearly the standards associated with safety have changed over time. And today the standards we use are much higher than they were when I started my career nearly 30 years ago, higher than 30 years before that. And so, you know, an area where we've worked on these kinds of issues is in the material disposition area B that's over here. That's that's an example of that past. And so we do know some things about what are there. Is our knowledge perfect? No. Is it zero? No. It's somewhere between nothing and perfect. But we've been able to use what we know, use sampling techniques to be able to, in a very safe way, deal with the material that's in MDAB. And so the answer is, I stand by what I said earlier. Our facilities are in a safe, secure, and protected stance.
Outside of the facilities, though, would you characterize any of that residual waste in today's terms as being hazardous?
Oh, well, certainly the historic waste was. I mean, if it involved plutonium as an example, it's of course hazardous. So it's not that we're changing what we call it today. I mean, back then they called it whatever they did. I don't know what they called it. I wasn't here then. But today we would certainly, and we handle it that way. We treat it that way as we, do the excavations to do the cleanup. So, we have reasonable information about what's there, both through what we know historically, records, talking to people, and sampling.
Maybe the better question is, can it or has it been disturbed?
Well, you mean by the fire?
By the fire recently, bulldozers?
Well, I mean, no, in the sense you're talking about, but I mean, we've been cleaning stuff up. And we do that, let me say again, in a very, very careful way.
Folks, one more last question, and then we need to cut it off.
The remediation that you're talking about in that particular area, when we were here a year ago, 2 years ago, it was kind of open. I've been told that there are structures that are movable structures that are put on top of some of those waste sites. Is that accurate, or I mean, is there?
So if you want to talk about what we've done in MDAB, we really need somebody else here. Michael Graham has worked that. So I'm not the right guy to try to give you the details, but I've got the people who can.
Thank you, folks. We'll be at 2 o'clock at the White Rock Baptist Church to talk to residents, and we'll see you tomorrow at noon here. Thank you all.
You have been watching and listening to a live news conference from Los Alamos dealing with the Las Conchas fire, which is now almost 93,000 acres, soon to be the largest fire in New Mexico history. Fire Chief Doug Tucker said it's been a good day and a bad day so far. Perhaps the highlight for the evacuees is the fact that they will not be allowed back into Los Alamos, not Friday, not Saturday. The earliest would be Sunday, and that's iffy. They will address that as they go along. He talked about the fire moving extremely aggressive through Santa Clara Canyon. It is creeping into Los Alamos Canyon as well. And again, he says this has been a good day and a bad day so far.
Then we heard from the police chief, and that is a problem because a lot of people have heard a rumor that they can go back home. Well, you can't. And he said they will stop you and make sure that you don't go into town. Don't wait on the side of the road either to get into town. If you're concerned about your home being vandalized or any looting, they have the National Guard there, and they are also watching everything very carefully, so you don't need to worry about that. Maybe the biggest thing from the governor was that TNT Fireworks has closed in Espanola and also Santa Fe.
And a number of other grocery stores are not selling fireworks at all. Jerome McDonald said that the fire moved 4 miles to the north today, and we also want to say that Charlie McMillian from Los Alamos Labs, a couple of highlights from him. He says the risk to the lab is lower today than it has been there, and the air monitoring, the air is fine for these type of conditions.